Our next feedback is from Riley, the host of the Diegetic Advancement Podcast. Another great podcast. You should give it a listen, but we're going to listen to his feedback right now.
Hey Joe, Riley here. Thank you for listening to my show, and I'm glad it's inspired an episode along with the Pink Phantom and obviously Jason. Thought I'd call in and share my thoughts here. As you say, I think this is going to come down to personal preference and I guess definition of minimum viable product as well. For the most part, I agree. I think the core resolution and character creation are probably the minimum viable product. From there, I think you can play a game. I don't know if you need to call out a skill system as something separate from character creation and resolution mechanic. I think that can kind of get bundled in there. And then I agree with your next premise, which is, that's probably okay as a minimum viable product, but what's the minimum viable interesting product, right? Because I already own at least one game, perhaps. So why would I buy another game if it only had a resolution mechanic and character generation? And I think from here, our preferences start to diverge a little bit. And this is, as you state, personal preference for the way that I like to run games and play. I want some GM player advice. I want an implied setting, and I want procedures for creating content needed for play. And I think there are a few reasons why I prefer things this way. One, I think these can be very succinct and probably only need to be succinct. Two, I think they can be ignored very easily. Three, they tell me why I should play this game versus another game. And four, it helps me build my own settings. I think you can add GM player advice in 1 to 2 pages. That's plenty. If you need more than that, as you say, you get it from other sources. An implied setting comes through in all the writing in the book. I don't think much extra content is added here versus something like a full setting where, again, get that from somewhere else. And then procedures, they can be pretty minimal as well, though for my personal preference, I think extra bulk here is good. And of course, I think all of this can be ignored in favor of your own setting or your own preferences, just like the rules, right? But I think they provide value even if you intend to ignore them. They tell me why and what the creator designed this game for. If the game is designed for a strategic sci-fi war game, but I want to play a narrative-heavy game about vampires, this is very helpful in making me pick this game versus another. It's a very different, polarizing differences there, but I think more appropriately, smaller differences are probably more useful to identify here. I also think it helps me understand the assumptions of the game for when I want to make my own setting. For example, imagine Monopoly. It has a resolution mechanic. You roll dice to move. You can buy land. You pay rent if it's owned, and sometimes other things happen depending on where you move to. It has character creation. You pick your favorite figure, the car, and start with X amount of money. It also has a setting, which is the board. And I think it'd be easier to build my own Monopoly game because I have the board to work from, as opposed to it just not existing. And no reference to how to build the board. Lastly, all the tools for content generation and prep. For me, I like to run things pretty fast and loose and low prep. So I find it very useful to be able to whip up a workable session with the help of tools. I can build something without these, of course, but it'll likely take me longer, and I'm not really sure if it'll work. And if players go off in some wild direction, I can fall back to this as a baseline. Anyway, thanks for listening again. Enjoyed listening to your thoughts. Had me think, I really like the point about separation of concern with, the game rules should probably just be enough to play the game, and setting and advice and all these things can be pushed on to other sources that will focus on that and do that better. And I agree with that, except for my caveats earlier. Lastly, sign me up for the RPG of a month change to your reviews. I won't be calling in for every game. For example, I'm not terribly interested in Star Trek or sci-fi generally, so I probably won't call in there, but I really like the format. So if something piques my interest, I will be calling in, and I'll be listening to everything. Anyway, take it easy. Bye for now.
Hey, Riley. Thanks for that call. A couple things to address there. The first thing is you said the Pink Phantom. I think you meant Evil Jeff of Minions and Musings. He was the other person that I was talking about during that episode. Yeah. The next thing you said was, why would I buy another game if I have a task mechanic I like? Why indeed? In fact, that might have been the whole thing. 20 years ago that got me on this kick of all these separations. And why do you need other games if you found the game mechanic that you really and truly like, the task resolution system that you really and truly like? Why pick up other games? For me, I think Fudge is the near perfect task resolution mechanic. It is elegant, it is good, it is great. For people who like more fine, granularity, like D percentile systems with a +1 and stuff. Yeah, Fudge is the other end of the spectrum. That wouldn't work for them. But for me, for my style of play, Fudge is near perfect. And why bother with anything else? Which might be why during RPG A Day August, when they said, first game you bought this year or whatever, I was like, I didn't. I don't buy new games because I have more than enough. And I don't know. I think a lot of people these days, not everyone, but a lot of people publish RPGs to make money. And I prefer small press or complete amateurs who just throw their stuff online and do it for a love of the hobby, not as a way to make money or even to recoup their costs, which is another reason for me to dislike art in rule books, because, that's where most of the money goes in an RPG rule book, is to the art, which adds absolutely nothing to the game. Don't get me on that soapbox. All right. You said that you want an implied setting. And you know what? After I edited my episode and everything, I was like, I was a little too harsh on implied settings because I actually like them more than I said. So I've talked a lot before about Traveler, how I don't like the Third Imperium. I don't like Traveler's explicit setting. I love Traveler's implicit setting. So the implicit setting of Traveler is that, there is no faster than light communication. Lies. There is no communication that's faster than the ships to take it, right? The implied setting is that ships take a week in hyperspace between destinations, no matter how far apart those destinations are. Traveler's implied setting is that in this society, there are a noble class. Traveler's implied setting is that spaceships are allowed to be armed. Civilian ships are allowed to be armed to protect themselves against pirates. Traveler's implied setting is that there are small skirmishes all over the place. Traveler's implied setting is that you probably had a military background, right? There's all these things that are in Traveler's implied setting, and I like those things. And I also remember, I don't remember how long ago it was, a while back, and I think it was when I was first coming into the OSR movement, I was telling a friend, because like I just said, right, Fudge, OSR, they're almost opposite ends of the spectrum. But I said, I've forgotten how easy it is to GM for an OSR type game, because everything is fed to you there. And that's that implied setting there. And that's that GM advice that you're talking about that you like how much treasure should this bugbear have, or should this golem have, or whatever. And that does make it incredibly easy for the GM. And if you're a new GM, someone starting out, I've been doing this for 45 years now. So it's kind of second nature to me. And I forget that there's people who still have to think about it. But I've said before that Tunnels and Trolls is a difficult game to balance encounters. And that's even me with all these years. And that's because of the way the math works. I should do a full episode on one, a short one on that someday. I think I will. So yeah, I was a little too harsh on implied settings, and I'm going to roll that back. And I'm saying I'm actually okay with implied settings. In fact, the more I think about it, it's hard to do a game world. Oh, well, that's not an implied setting. No, because that's the world. That's the setting. That's allowed. I was going to say it's hard to do a rule set that doesn't have an implied setting, but no, that's dead easy. GURPS did it. Fudge did it. Fate did it. Savage Worlds does it. Although, yeah. So, yeah. I don't think you need an applied setting, but I was actually saying that's one of those things that shouldn't be there. And I think I think it's okay for an implied setting to be there. Yeah, you said something about, it tells you why you should play this game versus another. But see, now you're going back into setting versus rules, and you play the rules because you like those rules. You like what they enable. You play the setting because you like that setting. And I think that the two should be divided and not meet. Of course, some rule sets are going to work better for some settings than the other way around. But that's okay. But you don't need that should be stated straight up, right? For when I did Shirts and Skirts, right? That's for a very cinematic, non-gritty, non-realistic space fantasy type game. But that's all you need to hear. And then that's why you'd pick up that rule set. Yeah. Yeah, you talked about adventure creation aids, I think that's what you called them. Yeah, those are great, aren't they? But I think they could be a standalone product. I've talked before about my favorite product of all time, my favorite module of all time, being Judges Guild Frontier Forts of Kelnor. And what that is an adventure creation system, all based on this one floor plan. So those are great, but I think those are independent of the game, and they don't need to be part of the game. So I'm standing by my original statement. Yes, they are great. I don't think they need to be part of the game, though. Yeah, I think I covered everything, at least in broad strokes. Overall, it sounds like we are on the same page, right? We're now just quibbling on the border cases, and that's fine, right? That's because otherwise, conversations become, yep, we agree. So I'm okay quibbling about edge cases. And like we both said, this is just a personal preference thing, and these are my preferences. Finally, the last thing you talked about was my RPG a month, or whatever I'm going to call it, for the reviews. I'm going to be doing another short episode about that all by itself, because I tacked that at the end of the other episode, and a lot of people might not make it all the way to the end. So I will talk about that then. But thanks for signing up, and hopefully one of the games I come up with will interest you. In fact, if you want to drop me a line about a list of some games that would interest you, can see if there's any commonality there. All right. So thanks for that, Riley. Everyone else, thanks for listening. And until next time, happy gaming, happy life. Bye.